If you want to break a strike, you go to boys who have big bare knuckles and who know how to wield the cudgels. And they turn to what could best be described as the Corsican mafia, under the leadership of a well-known Corsican racketeer by the name of Ferry Pisani, who became really a paid agent of Central Intelligence and collaborated with Irving Brown and Lovestone in their operation to break the strikes.
In about 1953, I terminated funds for Ferry Pisani. Of course, Brown did not like this, but there was nothing for Ferry Pisani to do at that time. And probably he was involved in smuggling heroin going through Marseille, and he didn't need our money. During the executive board meeting of the ICFTU, I was acting labor attaché, and I was escort officer for Mr. and Mrs. George Meany and Mr. Meany's secretary, Virginia Tejas. On the last evening of their stay in Brussels, as I was driving Mr. Meany, Mrs. Meany, and Mr. Meany's secretary back to the Metropole Hotel, we got into discussion about European labor and international labor, and perhaps it was unfair of me to go into this kind of dialogue with George Meany, because he did not know that I was working for CIA and that I had once been Washington case officer for Irving Brown's labor projects in France. I was the one who set his budget and cut his budget. So it was unfair, perhaps from that point of view, but I did take him on, and I gave him my views on how unpopular Irving Brown was, and as a consequence, how much damage he was doing free labor and discrediting people that he associated with, because he had the reputation, I knew it was deserved, of being a big money bag man for CIA. Meany didn't know how to quite cope with this, except to explain to me that there were some things I did not know about. These were precisely the things that I knew everything about.
The American Federation of Labor, during my time as Secretary-Treasurer and as President, and the AFL-CIO during my time as President, has never received any CIA money for any activity, either directly or indirectly. What's that? Yes, that applies to Irving Brown as well.
When you've come through a devastating war, as the European countries did, and people literally were pulling themselves out of rubble, those first courageous trade unionists who had the courage to reestablish their organizations desperately deserved help. And much of the first help that went to them, from the AFL even, was legitimate, was proper, was humanitarian. You know, you send care packages and you give them mimeograph machines and so on. When it went beyond that and became a matter of twisting their arm and saying, look now, you know, you're dependent on our help. You got to break up the old CGIL organization in Italy. And when they turned to a marvelous human being like Léon Blum, Nobel Prize winner, courageous French resistance hero, and turned to him and, against his own better judgment, forced him into breaking with his lifelong ties with the CGT, the Trade Union Federation of France. And when they financed the split in France and Italy, they isolated these heroic figures from the main body of the labor movement and thus destroyed their influence and made them captives of foreign largesse. And nothing will destroy the good name of a national trade union federation than to have it become known that they're dependent upon handouts from the rich uncles in America, especially if the rich uncle in America gets it from the CIA.
The purpose of all these different activities, the political and the front organizations in the different sectors of the population, were to fill this political vacuum that existed after World War II, and to fill it with those forces which would be favorable to close relations with the United States, the so-called Atlantic Alliance, and in order to preclude any